Yo, what's going on, my dweebs? Today we're gonna be reacting to this trail is so evil. It makes people betray everything, even their. Okay, I can't read. I can't read because I'm just brain dead. Okay, so I'm gonna redo this again. So the video is called "This Trail is So Evil. It makes good people betray everything, even their God." I don't know what to expect, but let's get into it in 3, 2, 1. If it can play the video.
One night in 1870, two best friends were out in the wilds of the Canadian wilderness when they discovered this gigantic gold mine. But within just a few hours of this seemingly incredible discovery, something horrible happened to these two men that kickstarted a chain of tragic events that today we still do not fully understand. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button their favorite dish, fettuccine alfredo. But replace the alfredo sauce with poisonous sea urchins.
I know I just paused it, but when he was talking about like, make sure you leave the like button, fettuccine alfredo or whatever he said, dude, that sounds fire. Alright. I know he's talking about food, but it just sounds good.
Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Who's ready for this video? Oh boy, let's go to it. Here we go.
On a spring morning in 1870, a gold prospector named Frank Lemon rode his horse along the shore of the North Saskatchewan River, which is a river that runs through Alberta and Saskatchewan in Canada. Frank was at the back of a line of about a dozen men who had all been hired by a rich investor named Lafayette French. He had commissioned them to search the Canadian wilderness for potential gold mines. And if they found a gold mine, then French would bankroll a full-scale mining operation and pull out all the gold he could, and these men who found it would get a cut of the profits. When Frank had signed up for this job, he had thought it was a great opportunity. In fact, he thought it was such a big opportunity that he had convinced his best friend, whose nickname was Blackjack, to come along as well. But now, after weeks of searching the wilderness for these mines and not finding any, all Frank really wanted to do now was just go home. And so as this group of men continued their ride along the shore, Frank sort of zoned out and just kind of stared off into the forest all around him. And then at some point, as he was doing this, as he was looking off to his right, he noticed amongst the thick trees, there was this little trail, this dirt trail.
Okay, so I would have done the same thing. Like, if I would have got done with everything I've done, like, oh, I can't do anything, I'm done, I'm tired, blah, 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 blah. If I was gonna, wander off, right, I would have looked around until I see a trail. I would have done the exact same thing. But here's the thing about a trail. You don't know where the hell it's gonna go. You don't know where the it's gonna go to or end to, right? It could be a bear cave, a cougar cave, or a mountain lion cave. Anything that can happen. You don't know what the hell is in there, okay? I'm just pointing that out. Alright, let's get back.
Trail that kind of wound off into the distance. And for some reason, Frank was just immediately drawn to it. And so he pulled on his horse's reins and came to a stop and just stared at this strange trail. Frank thought about how for all this time they'd been out here searching for gold, they'd basically only looked in this river and found nothing. And so he thought to himself, maybe the gold is not in the river, but it's maybe out there in the woods. And maybe this trail that he was looking at might lead them to gold. And so Frank turned back around to tell the rest of the group about his big idea, to try to go down this trail here. But when he looked, he saw all the men in the group, except for his best friend Blackjack, had continued on without him. They basically hadn't even stopped when Frank had stopped. However, Frank really didn't care that the group had left him because he was totally over this trip and frankly didn't want to be with this group anyways. And so he just looked over at Blackjack and just kind of gestured towards this trail as if to say, You want to go this way? And Blackjack, who was also totally over this trip, just smiled and nodded, like, yeah, let's go. And so the two men.
Bruh. I would. Okay. I will just say, I would not go that way. Like, hey, let's go this way. Yeah, let's go this way. Yeah. Let's go this way. Yeah, let's go. There might be some gold or diamond or yeah, let's go this way. Yeah. Nah, I would not want to go there. Oh boy, that's crazy. Just for mining gold and all that stuff. Like, okay, let me ask this, okay? If you were gonna be tired after mining gold or looking for gold or anything, right? If you see a random trail that's in front of you, would you be like, hey guys, let's go this way, let's go that way, see where it goes to? Would you guys do that same thing too?
No.
Because for me, I would not follow the trail. It's something I would not do. I would not go to the trail.
And turned their horses and began heading down this thin dirt trail off into the woods. For several hours, Frank and Blackjack continued on this trail deeper and deeper into the forest. You get a picture of very thick trees all around, and it's just this little winding dirt trail on the ground. They had no idea where this trail was going, but there was just something so powerful about this trail. It was like calling them to go. But as they rode along, Frank kept getting this bad feeling. Like he kept hearing what sounded like voices and footsteps right behind them on the trail. But every time he turned, all he saw was Blackjack. There was nobody around them at all. They were deep in the forest. And after a while, Frank kept hearing these noises, and he asked Blackjack, like, hey, are you hearing that stuff too? And Blackjack said, yeah, I am. But he too would turn around and see nothing. They were all alone. And so eventually, the men convinced themselves that, what those sounds must be is the sound of their party, who's discovered they have, left the group and maybe they're out there looking for them. But Frank and Blackjack really had no intention of rejoining the group. They kind of didn't like the group. And so they said, you know what, let's just keep on going. Eventually, the path these two friends were on led them to a stream. And so they stopped, they got off their horses, they knelt down and they scooped their canteens into the water to get a drink. And as Frank did that, he looked into the crystal water and he saw nuggets of gold just sitting there in the stream. Frank couldn't believe it. I mean, he's out here looking for gold, but he was not expecting to.
I don't know what I would say. And plus, you had two people going with you. You have you and then Blackjack that went with him, That's like a mystery.
Because like you're going to this trail, and then all of a sudden you hear these weird noises going on the trail.
Is this haunted or something? Because I would not want to go there because you don't know what's the end of the trail, But at the same time, it's like, do you really want to go there and follow the trail? See, there's any more stuff to find or something? Would you ever want to do that?
Oh, hell no!
If you were in their position, would you ever want to do that? Because, I honestly would go to it if I had somebody with me. Alright, let's get back to it.
Find it right here in the middle of nowhere, despite, his instinct that maybe the gold was out here. And so he just froze and he's staring at this. He can't believe it. He grabs Blackjack, who hadn't seen it yet, and pulls him over. Blackjack looks, and the two men, they're like, oh my goodness, we've done it. But Frank said, look, before we celebrate, let's see what we're dealing with here. Let's go upstream here and try to find the source of this gold. And so the two men, they got up, they're super excited. They start walking along the side of the stream, looking in the water. And as they're moving upstream, they're seeing all this gold in the water, and it's getting more and more. And eventually they reach this rock ledge. The water was pouring over down into the stream. And literally in the ledge are these massive veins of gold. They had found a gigantic gold mine that clearly nobody else had tapped before. I mean, this could be worth not just millions of dollars.
So you're gonna tell me these people followed a random trail out of nowhere, right? And all of a sudden, you're gonna tell me they rode their horses to a trail, and all they see is this water. They found a nugget, like a gold nugget, right? And they kept falling in the water, and they found more and more and more of gold. How? And like, there's like a waterfall barrier, like a rock barrier, like in there, right? With more gold and stuff. Where did it come from? Where?
But billions of dollars. And so at this point, the two friends began to celebrate. They were ecstatic. I mean, this is unbelievable. They're jumping around, they're hugging each other. And then at some point, they just kind of stopped and went silent because they realized they now had a big dilemma. So the whole reason Frank and Blackjack were out here in the Canadian wilderness was to look for gold, but they were looking for gold on behalf of the rich investor Lafayette French, which meant they were contractually obligated to tell French if they found gold. And so here they are, they found this massive gold mine, and that's what they're supposed to do, again, based on their contract. But if they did that, French would get rich beyond his wildest dreams from this mine, and yeah, he'd cut them a check, a piece of the profits, but it would be like nothing compared to what French would get from this gold mine. Or, and this is where the dilemma comes in, Frank and Blackjack could hide the fact that they had found this mine, and then they alone could come out here anytime they wanted, take the gold, and become rich themselves. Now, granted, they would have to be kind of subtle about it, because if they started showing up with barrelfuls of gold, Lafayette French is going to find out about it and they're going to be in trouble. But there was a way to do it where this mine could effectively be theirs and they could get rich. But obviously there was a lot of risk involved in that second choice. And so Frank and Blackjack decided that, this is way too big of a decision for us to make just on the fly right now. So let's just stay here in the area, let's camp out for the night and just sleep on this and come to a decision tomorrow. So the two men left the stream and headed over to this clearing that was right nearby and decided that's where they would pitch their camp for the night. Blackjack left to go gather firewood and Frank began to pitch their tent. And as Frank did that, as he began setting up their tent, he began hearing whispers, kind of like the voices he was hearing as they were walking in on that trail, and they kept thinking it was maybe the group that was looking for them. He began hearing those voices again. It was kind of all around him in the trees. But every time he looked, there was no one there. Now, Frank convinced himself that maybe these whispers were actually Blackjack, because he had gone off to get firewood, and maybe it was him. But at one point when Frank...
No. You're gonna tell me they hear whispers through the woods and all that crap. Nah. I would be scared so bad if I was gonna hear like whisper or someone talking in the woods or just saying stuff. I would be so scared. Bro.
That's crazy. Oh my god.
Heard these whispers, he looked in the direction of the whispers, there was no one there, and he realized Blackjack was at the same time on the opposite side of the clearing. It could not have been him. And so Frank couldn't help but feel really unsettled. It was like there was somebody or something here watching them or listening to them, but he just couldn't tell who or what it was. But Frank just told himself to shake it off, don't worry about that. Instead, just focus on getting the camp set up. We recently launched our newest podcast at Ballin Studios called Redacted, Declassified Mysteries with Luke Lamanna. And so far, you guys are loving it. So much so that I am now happy to announce that we've created an official YouTube channel for the show Redacted. So now you can enjoy listening to and watching this show in a beautiful new animated format. And if you love binging things like I do, well, you're in luck, because we just dropped the first 3 episodes of this new animated series. And from here on out, every Tuesday, you'll get a brand new upload on this channel. To give you a sense of the stories and the artwork that you'll see on this brand new Redacted YouTube channel, here's a look at a clip from episode 1. And keep in mind, what you'll see in this clip is reflective of how all the episodes will be on this channel.
At 10:35 p.m. on January 3rd, 1961, a physicist named Ed Valario pulled up to a secret nuclear test site.
Okay, so before we get into it, the redacted, I will put a link of the redacted of their stuff, right? I'll put it in the description below so you guys can check it out for yourselves.
In the Idaho desert. Ed had received an emergency call about an explosion at the nuclear reactor known as SL-1. No one had been able to contact the 3 men who were working that night. Valario waved at his partner who was waiting for him in front of the reactor building. The 2 men grabbed their gas masks and rushed inside. They hurried up 3 flights of winding stairs that led toward the reactor's control room, past pipes and motors and condensers, towards the cramped nerve center that controlled the reactor. The building was completely silent, save for the frantic static from their Geiger counters. Valario glanced down and saw the needle pointing to maximum radiation levels. He'd never seen levels that high before. When Valario opened the control room door, his heart skipped a beat. The scene inside was total devastation. Twisted metal scattered across the floor, clouds of steam hovering above the shattered control board, pools of blood and water everywhere. 2 bodies lay on the floor, bodies so badly mutilated it was impossible to tell who they were. But where, he wondered, was the 3rd man? Then something above him caught his attention. Something on the ceiling. Something that would haunt him for the rest of his life.
Head on over to the official Redacted YouTube channel today. The handle is @RedactedMysteries. Make sure you go over there and subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. I will also put a link to the channel in the description below. Wondery Plus subscribers can also watch Redacted on the Wondery app. Okay, back to the stories.
Okay, that was something. Anyway, I'm gonna do a part 2 of this. Anyway, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you guys are new, and if you want part 2, let's get maybe 5. I don't know. You guys can put how many likes you guys want. I don't care. Let me know in the comments below. What do you guys think about this video? I thought it was pretty interesting myself. That's crazy, finding gold and like you follow the trail and like keep going and going and going and going. You see more gold, a little bit bigger piece of gold, and more nugget pieces. It's like, dude, that's crazy to think about. Alright, I'm out. Dweeb out. Peace.